Hello, this is Arielle from Inconspicuous Bear, and I'll be narrating the heroic version of the Iron Reaver encounter in Hellfire Citadel from a Guardian point of view. Iron Reaver is all about positioning. Positioning of the boss, positioning of the tanks, positioning of the raid relative to the boss, and so on and so on. So you'll want to make sure that you are maintaining the position you're supposed to maintain as much as humanly possible, which, should be most of the time, in order to make sure that everyone else doesn't have to compensate for things that you do. You'll understand once we start talking about the abilities. The first ability you have to worry about is something called Artillery, which basically puts a debuff on you, and after some amount of time, I think it's like 15 seconds, she fires a shell at you, and it'll explode for like 100 or 450k ish fire damage to everything within 40 yards. Or not within 40 yards, but 450k at the impact point, reducing damage being reduced further out you are, up to the maximum distance of 40 yards. The reason this is important is because it means you have to run pretty far away from the raid. 30 yards is probably sufficient. Going 40 is a little bit excessive, and this makes it really hard to travel back to the boss in a reasonable amount of time, because you need to be switching off, because two tanks can have artillery at once, so like both tanks can have the debuff, but they'll be expiring at different times, and you want to make sure that you gave your co-tank enough time to get out and drop their shell. So probably somewhere around 30 yards is probably optimal, so you don't end up having those times cross over like a shell exploding on melee, which would be really, really bad. So just something to keep in mind there. And this also means that you want to use or save your burst movement for those times where you need to move really fast. A lot of the time you'll just end up walking in cat form or something, but sometimes you'll actually end up you'll need burst movement in order to travel long distances in a short amount of time to facilitate the tank swaps. It should also be noted that while artillery continues into phase 2, the flying phase, you as a tank don't actually have to deal with it, so the only artillery you're concerned about are the ones that happen in phase 1 when she's on the ground. The second mechanic that you'll have to worry about from a positioning point of view is called immolation. Basically, there's fire on the ground, you stand in a stack, each stack deals around 12k fire damage a second, so it's pretty bad. Don't get very high stacks. You also need to make sure that you're positioning the boss such that the melee aren't being forced to stand in fire, which is bad. Fire persists throughout the entire encounter, except for certain mechanics which can like push it away, or like knock a lot of it like really far away, or what have you. So yeah, just be aware of where the fire is, and when you're like running for artillery or running around in phase 2, the air phase, just don't stand in fire. The last mechanic you need to look out for is something called Falling Slam. When Iron Reaver is landing from her air phase, there'll be a huge kind of brown circular circle on the ground. You need to make sure you're not inside that. However, you need to make sure you're near that, because that's where Reaver is going to come down from the sky and be tankable again. And you want to be tanking her in that circle, because it'll be completely free of fire, which means melee will have plenty of places to stand. So just make sure that you're paying attention where the circle is, and that if you're the tank picking her up after she lands, you're there to do so without her moving out of the free area. Talents are a little bit different for this fight, which is kind of a refreshing thing, actually. For the first tier, you'll actually want Displacer Beast, because as I mentioned the burst movement requirements earlier, you will end up using it either traveling out because your artillery debuff has like no time left, or traveling back in because the tank needs to get out as soon as possible. So Displacer Beast is an extremely good talent to have for this encounter. Iron Ward, Snarl of the Forest, those are kind of staples. Then we get to German Scenarios, which is also stable, and the last one is Bristling Fur. And the reason this is useful is because 450k damage is actually a lot, and you're not going to have basically any resolve out of it, and you're also not going to have any resolve going into it either, so you can't like pre-haunt yourself, and you're also out of range of healers, so they can't help you recover before you get back in to start tanking Reaver again. So you need to make sure that you're reducing the damage as much as possible, and Glyph SI and or Bristling Fur is a good way to do that. In terms of Guardian specific things you can do, don't be afraid to use Skull Bash and or Dash when moving in or out for artilleries, and they're really good movement talents to have, or movement abilities to have available to you, so make sure you use them if you need to. Obviously, always use Displacer Beast as a preference, just due to the shorter cooldown. But have those in your back pocket. Also, when you're coming back, if you displace out, remember you can skull charge back in from 15 yards, or skull bash charge in from 15 yards, which will make it easier for the other tank to move out for their artillery. Hope you enjoyed this video, and good luck with Iron Reaver.